All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get underway. Welcome to Marquette University Law School, the Lubar Center at Eckstein Hall. I'm Mike Houchet, and this is On the Issues. This is our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people who are doing interesting and important work in this region and beyond. Today, we are joined by Ricardo Diaz. Ricardo Diaz is the Executive Director of the United Community Center, something I've described as really a powerhouse organization on Milwaukee's near south side. Ricardo is also a familiar face to many of you in this room. He is on a number of civic boards. He's involved with a lot of organizations that are doing very positive things in our community. So we are delighted to have him with us today. Won't you please give a warm welcome to Ricardo Diaz. Good to have you here. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but I want to begin by giving everyone in this room a sense of all the things you're doing today in the United Community Center. What is the role of the center in today's Milwaukee?
Mike, I think simply is getting Hispanics to the middle class. If you look at a successful community, a successful urban center, it's an educated workforce. How many college graduates do you have? And so we've looked at that very carefully and really think that our role is to serve as a bridge of how do we get young people into the workforce of the future. We see that as the essential piece of making Milwaukee one of the great cities in this country. And we're laser focused on making sure that we get the kids to achieve to their maximum potential. And every day is a new day. I don't care what you did yesterday. Let's talk about what you're going to do about today. And so when we talk about getting our students into the best high schools, today we're the largest feeder of Catholic education in Milwaukee. We're very proud of that because of the quality of the education. It's a little bit of a cachet if you say, I graduated from Marquette High School. That has currency. Divine Savior, Brookfield Academy. I mean, today's paper, the young person that was featured in the Alverno article about the new Hispanic, that is a graduate of UCC, of Bruce Guadalupe, that went to Brookfield Academy and today is at Alverno College talking about her future.
That's the story you want to replicate.
That's the story. Yeah. That's the story. We think that Milwaukee will go as far as the Hispanic community will take it. We're very bullish about that. We're the fastest growing community. The only reason Milwaukee is at the number that it is today, 600,000, is because of Hispanic growth. Our employment rate is what it is because of Hispanic employment. So there's a direct correlation between the success of the Hispanic community and the success of Milwaukee.
You've just given me a million different directions to go in, and we're going to touch on them all, I promise, in the next hour. But I want to get a sense, again, for people in this room, the things that the UCC does. When I look at the work that your organization does, I sometimes think of something like the Harlem Children's Zone, where you have schools, and you've just been talking about the schools you have there, and we'll spend more time on that. But you have schools, but you have these wraparound community services. What all do you offer at the UCC for people in the community?
Okay. So recently, the beginning of this month, and actually October, we bought a new child care center. So if we had had this discussion a month ago, I said we start at 3 years of age. Now we start at 6 weeks.
6 weeks old.
Yeah. And there was a day last month where I had an opportunity to go visit that center. A new baby, 6 weeks old. That afternoon, I talked to Maria Avila, 102 years of age, right at UCC campus, all within the course of a couple of hours. So it really is everything in between. For the elderly, we're dealing with the largest senior center in Milwaukee County today by far. And our demographics don't reflect that because Hispanics tend to, their numbers at the top, 60 and over, is not as large as the community at large, but yet people speak with their feet every day. Obviously part of it is the good lunch that we serve. But other than that, is that 120 people are having lunch at UCC right now, seniors over 60 years of age and over. At the same time, we're dealing with a daycare center for seniors. Hispanics had Alzheimer's about 5 years earlier than the population at large. So we're working with the two medical schools to be able to find out why. What are some of the reasons? And how can we improve the quality of life as someone ages in place? Then we talk about the arts and the theater and the musical. We have over 200 students with a strings instrument in their hands. This year we started a drumming program and a dance program. So just about every child, 1,450 students in our school is involved in some of the arts program, because we think how important the art is as far as developing the entire individual.
It's really from cradle to really end-of-life decisions,
right.
the kinds of things that we confront if we're lucky enough to get older.
Right. Home ownership. You measure the success of neighborhoods by the percentage of people who own their homes. And so over the last 14 years, we've had 1,110 individuals buy a home through our housing agency in the city of Milwaukee. Over $100 million worth of investment as a result of that. Average of 80 new home buyers every year for the last 14 years. Most of them are Hispanics. Most of them are making an investment. This is my pitch related to where the city goes in the Hispanic community with that correlation. And Hispanics are not here because of the weather. Hispanics...
None of us are.
Yeah. And so they're here, because they love this city. This is a wonderful city, one of the best in the country for everybody, but it's a very good city for Hispanics in general. This is one of the best cities for you to have a family. If you're a Hispanic family, this is one of the best places to be.
I'll talk to you about Bruce Guadalupe. So there was clearly a point in the UCC's history where you decided that education was going to be, in many respects, the cornerstone of the work you were doing. What led you to that decision? I mean, you can provide a lot of different services for people, but you clearly decided we're going to open our own school. Why?
Two things. About 20 years ago, and many of you who are associated with Marquette High remember Larry Seward, the former principal there. And I happened to have been sitting at the Marquette High board way back and asked him, so how many kids from Bruce, so we're just starting out, come to your school? And he was a little bit reluctant, and I think he said like 2 or 3. I think he was probably being kind. Mm-hmm. And secondly, his experience with my daughter, going to Dominican high school, and the experience that happened there, and how much of a life changer that kind of an education is, and the kind of education that you receive, and that, quite frankly, makes a difference. So if you're running a nonprofit agency, there should be 2 criteria while you're in business. One of them is, would you put your relative in the program that you run? So if you're running a school, would you have your own child attend that school? If you're running a senior center, would you let your parents participate? And if the answer is no, it shouldn't be good for anybody else either. So I think that's one of the key criteria that has driven UCC for years, is this practical, we can do all the research in the world, but the true test is, are you willing to put someone in your own family in a program that you run? And secondly is, there's a lot of stuff about strategic planning and all that, and it's important. But watch where, my office sits right across from Walker Square Park, and one of the things is, watch where the people walk and then build a path. Don't do it the other way around. We tend to somehow think that we have this program and people will come to us as part of what we do, as opposed to really trying to find out what they need. And so, in long answer to your question was, really, we think that education is the civil rights of this era, and that is the passport to the future, is the gateway, whatever term we wanted to use, but it opens doors. If we look at institutions like this, one of the criteria is people are educated. So what do we need to do as a community to get as many people educated? And that's really was the motives behind it.
So Bruce Guadalupe today, this is I think it's a K4 through 8th grade school.
K3.
K3 now? Okay, so K3 through 8th. How many students do you have there? And what are the outcomes? What are the results that you're seeing?
So 1,350 at Bruce, 125 over at Acosta, which we just opened.
You just opened a second school.
96% of our kids graduate from high school. We have approximately 250 kids in college. 215 are in the state of Wisconsin. And when we have any government officials coming through our agencies, we point that out. There's a particular reason why those kids are in the state of Wisconsin going there. Most of the Hispanic community in this generation will stay in Milwaukee, will stay in Wisconsin. And I think that's an important point in terms of economic development. So we follow our students. We purposely do not have a high school. We made a conscious decision, even though we've had donors offer.
I was going to say, would you ever do that?
No.
No.
No, we want to send our kids, we want to break the ice for the same reason I talked about my daughter and going to Dominican, is that there's something about a high school relationship and breaking away from kids that you've been, all the way from kindergarten. Now here's an opportunity for you, because that's how you're going to do business. You're going to be able to now get into an environment that's going to be more competitive, that's going to be different. And we think that is valuable, and that has currency.
So you just mentioned that you've added a second school, a middle school, Acosta Middle School. What was the reasoning behind that?
Because we got tired of people saying, not everybody needs to go to college, that there's something about technical education, STEM, STEAM, all of those kinds of things. Great, wonderful cocktail talks. What are you doing about it? So we decided that kids make decisions sometimes in 5th and 6th grade by watching, and that we needed to have a different product. For the last 12 years, we've been talking about college meaning 4-year education, but the value of a 2-year education is just as valuable, as important. Jennifer, on the way here, one of our staff was saying to me they were just over at Quad Graphics yesterday, and the lack of, basically, the need for employment. He was saying one of the things is people do not work with their hands anymore. And so we see that exposing kids at that moment is important, to give them an idea there are other jobs out there. And so even though the growth in the Hispanic community is what it is, but without the credentials, it may not mean very much.
There's a lot of competition for Hispanic students in this town, just the ages that you educate. I was thinking before we came down here, I mean, there's Escuela View, the MPS school, but there's St. Anthony's, there's Rocket Ship, there's now St. Augustine's.
Right.
There are a lot of players in that space. Is that a good thing? Is it a healthy thing, or is it make it
I think it's a healthy thing as long as we're talking about quality. I mean, just opening seats for the sake of seats doesn't do much. Right around our campus, there are about 6 schools that are within a 1-mile radius of where we are. Notre Dame, a wonderful school, Nativity. I think competition is good. I came from a sports background, and so I love competition. I love when somebody says you can't do something. I loved, the whole issue of fighting poverty and feeling that this, sitting down and who can top, who's got the worst story about what didn't happen. And I always say Mitchell Field doesn't advertise their crashes. And we should not be advertising. We're an urban center, we have issues, but we also have assets. And so, we think that we have a product that is very unique. That it not only you drop your child and you can go to a fitness center, you drop your child, you basically can see, our whole restaurant. You drop your child off and you basically are our gallery. So we have a number of amenities that I think distinguishes us from the competition. But we want the competition to every day get up and say, I'm going to be better than UCC. I'm going to try to do better. Because if they try, in that competition, all of us, basically the bar will be higher, and we like that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the performance of schools in this community generally? You opened Bruce Guadalupe because you believed that there was a need for a school, a high-performing school. You've been involved in education in Milwaukee for a long time. How are we doing today in 2017? And I'm talking about, I guess, the three parts of what they call the ecosystem, whether it's public or whether it's charter, like Bruce Guadalupe, or whether it's voucher. How are we doing?
Not well. I think all three sectors can do a lot better. There should not be a charter school open in Milwaukee that does not do better than the system as a whole. If not, why are you open? Charter schools, and we've misinterpreted what charter schools are all about. Charter schools are supposed to be sort of the canary in the mine, so to speak. They're supposed to be the innovators. They're supposed to have the kinds of innovation that others will follow, the kinds of trends. And we see a little bit of uniforms, extended school day, summer school, and we're seeing some of the rest of the system adopting some of those kinds of things. But as a whole, we're not doing well. I mean, a friend of mine this past weekend, many of you know, Henry Tyson, wrote about
St. Marcus.
At St. Marcus, that we're not outraged enough, that we get upset about a whole number of things, but we're not upset enough about changing our educational structure. In this fight, this what I would call this artificial fight among the three sectors, we should have a fight about who has the best math curriculum. What are they doing? As well as we think we are doing, we just changed our math curriculum this year. What do we need to do better? Let's have a group of teachers really talk about what's working, as opposed to fight with one another about you shouldn't exist. And the energy that energy is not about kids. That energy is about adult employment. All we do in education is fight about somebody's jobs and about somebody's benefit, not about the kids.
Do you see a day when those silos come down, or are they so ingrained in the educational scene in Milwaukee that they remain for a long period of time?
I think we need more leadership in this area. I think we need to lead from the front. I think we need to be able to come together and realize that on our best day, the charter and the choice movement, we're talking 30,000 kids, or 125,000 K through 12. So there's a whole number of kids. And there's a number, Rob Rouse School on the north side, an example. Milwaukee College Prep. We should be following. We should be asking Rob, tell me what you're doing. How can we replicate it? You had Vincent here a couple of weeks ago, the work that Vincent is doing. Vincent had one...
Vincent Lyles, who has the Boys and Girls Clubs.
And I said to Vincent a couple of years ago, he brought several of us together and said, why don't you give me your 8th graders from all these different schools, and I'll have one day in camp in which we could bring these kids together. It's sort of like a Milwaukee Forum for kids, so to speak, of getting together and so on. Incredible, wonderful idea. It was the only good idea Vince had that year. But it was...
I'll be sure to share that with him.
But it was he's up there.
Oh, I didn't see you up there, I'm sorry. Do you want to stand?
But that's the kind of thing we need to do more of. How do we bring people together? How do we bring these kids together? All of us talk about, race and the divisions, the things that divide us. He was talking about something that united us. For kids that are now, probably those kids that he brought, are now in college. And could they develop a relationship that would be long-lasting and so on? Those are the kinds of things that we ought to be investing in and thinking about and trying to do. And I don't know that it's specific to one of the choice or charter of the traditional public schools. They're all good kids, they're all good teachers in each one of those systems, and the opposite is also true.
You ever get discouraged? I read Alan Borsick, who works here at the law school, did a piece on Howard Fuller in the Sunday paper. And I think it's safe to say that Howard's been through a lot of these battles, and he feels at times a little discouraged. Do you share that?
No, I don't. I still think that our problems are solvable, that there are many, many good things going on here. We have that Midwest thing that we shake somebody's hand and look at their shoes, and I think we need to uplift and think about the things that are happening, whether we're talking about Vincent, Joe Brennan at Discovery World, Notre Dame. I mean, there's a lot of good things. Patricia Hoban, what they're doing at Carmen, they're making a difference. We just need to do more of that and celebrate that. You know, Mike, you had, interesting, talking about Alan, he did a wonderful article in your magazine this month about Shel Lubar, who basically is, matter of fact, and Shel talked about what do you invest in, and in his philosophy, and he talked about the people and the institutions and how he basically analyzed a business and said, I'm investing in the management of that company and so on. And in philanthropy, we don't invest that way. We invest about the problem, not about the solution. And so, we're geared to tell you our unemployment rate, our dropout rate, our pregnancy rate, and all of that. And then, we compete with each other, who has a higher one, as opposed to what are your solutions? People do not pay Ricardo Diaz to tell you about the problem. You're not paying me. You're paying me to give you solutions.
So you mentioned it earlier, and I want to explore this further with you. And you told me this over lunch over the summer, and you said, the Hispanic community will determine Milwaukee's future. And that's a big statement. What do you mean by that? Why do you believe that?
Because, one of the things that you look at the Milwaukee Foundation study, the growth of the community in this area, the zip code 53215, 5,000 children under the age of 5. It is the most dense, zip code in the state of Wisconsin in terms of children. So the opportunities that are there are incredible. The other thing, which didn't come out in this study, is the optimism. The Hispanic community in general, nationally, is one of the most optimistic community in the country, in spite of what one sees. When I talked about the home ownership, think about any one of us going to a foreign country without sometimes legal papers and buying a home, where at any moment somebody can come and say, hey, get out of here. And so I think that takes courage, that takes basically willingness, that takes the positive attitude of what can happen in a country. And this is I think Hispanics believe in this country as something very unique, as something that only can happen in the United States of America.
Well, what do you see as the biggest challenges, though, in your community today? What are the things that really need to be fixed? Education, clearly one, but what else?
I think what we have is, very high levels of employment among males, almost no unemployment, very limited, but we're underemployed. So if you're holding a job fair in the Hispanic community, it should be a job fair for the employed. How can I move you to the next? And then, the lack of representation in many fields, even construction, almost with all the construction that is going on in the community today, the Hispanic representation is limited. Business startup, incredible work that has been done in the last 5 years in terms of new business startup, but we're still last in the country from a Hispanic perspective. So lots of work to be done. But we still need this, so you asked me about the competition. We need more kids to get into the schools, like I talked about before, that are there, to make sure they really have a chance. So my sense, but the other thing is, we as a community do not need to wait for perfection. We have this thing, don't let perfection get in the way of good. There are a number of things that we need to do today that we can do, invest in, a Carmen High School, a Notre Dame, a Vincent Lyles and the Boys and Girls Club, that we could do that today. We don't have to wait for everything to be perfect and the next study to come out, or get on a plane at Mitchell to go see another community. That drives me crazy. Absolutely. I mean, there's
And we go to other communities to look for solutions, really?
Constantly. I mean,
why does that drive you crazy?
I believe that we need to basically know and bring best practices and so on, but we have some of the best practices right here. The amount of knowledge, I'm always amazed when I visit some of the other schools, including ours, but the talent that is in the room and what they're doing with some of the very same issues that you hear about in other, that occur And, we have over 70% of our kids come to us in 3-year-old kindergarten without English. And by the second semester, most of them are speaking English and are involved and are engaged. And so there are answers. We don't have to go to, San Antonio or New York to find that out. Go look.
Well, something else you said to me this summer that stuck with me was, and you said it again here today, that Milwaukee is a great city. If you're Hispanic, if you're, and you want to put down roots somewhere, Milwaukee is a great place to be. Why is it better, for example, than a city like Chicago or San Antonio or places like that? Why is Milwaukee better?
I think we have issues, but I think that the quality of the life, whether we're talking about arts, sports, all of the kinds of amenities that sort of make a city great, places like Marquette University, Carroll College, Mount Mary. I mean, we have a list of some of the most wonderful higher ed institutions, the MATCs on the technical side. Get anywhere within 20 minutes. I think that, there are the amenities that we have in this city are second to none. Our art scene is incredible. So again, there are a lot of things that we go to Chicago for, and it's great and all that, but I think we have a lot of assets right here that we don't often, except when we have a visitor. Then we want to show off, our lake and this, that, and the other, but other than that, we don't go. And we participate.
Do you see, right now I think the Hispanic population is about, it's between 15 and 20%?
Of the city of Milwaukee,
City of Milwaukee.
160,000 and countywide,
about 10% of the metro area.
Right.
Do you see that population growth, the growth that we've seen over the last 2 decades, do you see that continuing?
Yeah, by birth. Now, this is another fallacy that they're coming. I'm not sure if we're going to build a wall, but most of the growth in Milwaukee is basically by birth, not by immigration for the most part.
Right, I think it's like 80% of our U.S. citizens.
80%,
yeah.
80% of Hispanic Milwaukeeans are citizens of the U.S. So it's so when you say go home, there's this I am home type of situation. So it's, in many respects, I think will continue to grow. I mean, a very young population under 19 years of age. So again, all of those things, I think those trends will continue.
Well, you indirectly mentioned immigration.
Yeah.
And so I do want to ask you that question. What do you see at the UCC? There is certainly the new administration has said we're going to get tougher on what we see as illegal immigration, on undocumented people in this country. How has that affected the Latino community? What do you see on a day-to-day basis?
I think people are very concerned. There's fear. I think that every time there's a new tweet or whatever, people get because then that gets embellished. So I'm very concerned. I mean, overall about, this whole, the DACA thing. We're now month 5, giving something to Congress I'm suspending the rules and I'm giving it to Congress, and I'm trying to figure out what issue Congress has fixed over the last, healthcare, taxes, immigration. So people, March is coming, and that clock is moving, and I think families are being displaced or the fear thereof.
You have concerns that, and the deadline is essentially March for Congress to come up with a way to make it legal, I guess, for these dreamers who came with their parents at a young age to this country. They were brought into the country illegally, but they were kids at the time, 5.5 years old for most of them. You're not confident that Congress can get that figured out by
there's
by
talk
March.
now of slipping into, the Democrats slipping some legislation to an existing bill to try to get it through. My sense, I doubt that's going to work, but you're leaving it to a number of people that over the last several years have not gotten things. You and I did a show I'm thinking 15 years ago, and you asked about immigration. I'm not sure that anything has changed since I answered the question. I think that was when President Fox Mexico was
Right.
here, and the Bush administration, and then 9/11 happened, and so there's always been reasons why we can't get this done, and the fear that people have of the unknown. This is the most industrious group of people that you'll ever want to meet. It really breaks my heart because I could have been that story. I mean, if we had at some point in 1961 some type of an immigration policy, whatever, against Cuba, I would not be here.
So that's an interesting point, and I want to pursue that. So I want to talk about your life story and how that ended up, I think, helping you choose what you wanted to do for your life's work. So we were talking about this. You were born in Cuba. You lived for a while in New Jersey with your aunt and uncle. Your parents moved up there. Didn't like New Jersey weather.
Not much.
Took the family and moved to Puerto Rico.
Right.
And then you moved to Waukesha, Wisconsin, to attend college at Carroll.
Harvard of the Midwest.
That's right. Carroll University. You were a pretty fair basketball player, I understand. Yeah. Doesn't want to brag. But my question is this. How did your experience, and you just referenced that, how does your experience, what role did that play in the career that you chose? And this is your second stint, I should say, at the UCC.
Right. Well, first of all, you know, the person that brought me from Carroll, a woman named Shirley Hilger, who also brought Howard Fuller to Carroll as well. She was a pioneer, maybe that's the name of the school, you know, way ahead of her time in terms of bringing in. I was the first group in 1970 that came to Carroll, and a whole number of folks follow as a result of her work, which is the only reason I'm saying that is that a person, an individual does make a difference. One person can do, you know, and make a difference. My second semester freshman year, the Waukesha school system had an issue in terms of not having a bilingual program, and someone can deal with this young man named Victor. Victor was 14 years of age, probably functioning at about a 7, 8-year-old level, truant 95% of the time, but they had a responsibility. So I came in contact with the Waukesha school system. They hired me to work with Victor on a one-on-one. That changed my trajectory. I wanted to be a physical education teacher. I wanted to go back to Puerto Rico and play basketball, whatever, and be an athletic something. I changed my major. I got involved with La Casa de Esperanza out in Waukesha, set up a tutoring program, did a number of things with students at Carroll and Waukesha, became the director of La Casa when I was a senior in college. $6,000 was my annual pay, which is wonderful. I made more when I was in college working than I did my first job. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I really think that was really an eye-opener and really saw that you can make a difference. You can deal with tough issues. And so that led me at some point to UCC, which is, besides my family, is probably the second, you know, it is, I mean, part of our success, I didn't say that, is that we are a family. I mean, if you really look at our people that work there, they're not because they weren't successful in winning the lottery that weekend. They are really working there because it's a commitment.
They choose to work there.
They choose to work there. They're making a difference. They're really about getting things done. And I have the privilege of working with them.
So part of your life was spent in a different kind of public service, I would argue. Obviously, what you're doing today is public service, but you also worked for the city of Milwaukee, and you ran the housing agency, and you ran the economic development department. So you've been in this town a long time. You've seen how we do things, what we do well, what we don't do so well. Give us some honest opinions about Milwaukee today. What do we need to do better to be the city we all want us to be?
You know, the time that I spent in the city was educational. I learned more. I had no business being the Commissioner of City Development. I mean, I think Mayor Norquist at the time, other than he just needed a different face. I just happened to be at the right place, whatever, but I was way over my head. Happened to be surrounded by some talented people. Learned a great deal. Disappointments along the way. We won our first election in '92, and I was part of the team until I wasn't part of the team. And they decided to make a change, and so I went to play second base as opposed to shortstop, and I was supposed to like that, and I, as a good trooper, said yes. And that led me to the Housing Authority. And today, the Housing Authority of Milwaukee is probably one of the premier housing authorities in the country. I think I had a little bit to do with that. So, I think city government is one of the best city governments around. I think they're incredible people, very dedicated. We, I think, just need to have a few big ideas. I think we need to execute on a few big ideas and get people the positive, something to work for, something to shoot. During the time, Carl Miller was the chief of staff, and Carl had a way of, even if you screw up, just do something big. If you're gonna just think of something. So, the Riverwalk, the Riverwalk today becomes secondary, but at that time,
That was a big deal.
a big deal. I think we have the infrastructure. I mean, most of the buildings, if people around the room remember, the late 80s, early 90s, all our buildings, had their backs to the river. Today, you wouldn't think about doing that, and I think the Riverwalk did that. And part of it was fighting tooth and nail with the DNR because, they did not want that to happen, and we had to fight. So I think it's that kind of a situation that you had a big idea of how to do this sidewalks, these infrastructure that really made a difference. And I think that's what we need. We need to continue to have one or two big ideas that we implement over a period of time, and not perhaps be as concerned about the 4-year cycle of reelection or the 2-year or whatever. And I do think that today, I do think civic organizations need to lead the way much more than perhaps in the past. So the Rotaries, the Marquette universities, the other institutions, I think need to take a much deeper role. I'm not sure we're going to do it through the political arena as much. The infighting, the need to get credit. One of the things that I learned, and Meg can attest to this, I would get up at that time, there was actually a newspaper, we had 2 of them, and depending on what the headline was, how your day was going to go. And even when it was a good headline, if your boss's name was not, if your boss was there, your name was there.
That wasn't a good headline.
That was not a good day.
Yeah.
And so I do think, but there was some civility, give and take. I'm not sure that exists today, and I think that starts at the national level and goes down. And so I do think that the MACs, the GMCs, others need to perhaps continue to push so that we can get there. I'm not sure that there's a role for government, certainly, but I do think that it is us as citizens that need to continue to push the envelope.
Where does you've been a leader in this community for a long time. You've led in different ways. What does the next generation of leadership look like in this community? Who are they? What would you like to see from them?
I'm very optimistic about on the Hispanic side and in general about. I think the next group of people. I think we tend to focus too much on what's different about us, and I'm not sure that the next generation focuses that much on those kinds of things. The race issue in this town is a tough one that we've got to get over, and I'm not sure the next generation is as focused as our generation is on that issue. We live, Matt Flynn, now running for governor, wrote a while back about how we live in tribes, and we all stay in our lanes. And I think we need to change that kind of thinking. And the only way we're going to do it is these kinds of discussions, breaking barriers along many ways. Racial, economic, to some extent.
We tend to, I think you said to me that, we socialize and spend our time with people who look like us, sound like us.
Yeah.
We don't deviate from that very much. We don't seem terribly interested in deviating from it very much.
Right. We're very comfortable. We hire people that, tend to reflect, who we are and so on. And some of those are important, but I'm not sure that we need to make that as much of an emphasis that we give that and I'm hoping that the next generation, really breaks through that.
I think they're more impatient, don't you? The one thing I will say about the younger folks, and some of whom are in this room, my take is that they're impatient, and they don't necessarily want to play by the same rules that we played by as we went along through our careers in this city.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think the other focus that we have is it needs to be right. We just don't want to jump in until, I don't think we've run a campaign at UCC where we've had all the money. I can't think of a time where, now that you have all the money, do the project. We do it just the other way around. Do it and they will come. And I think the lack of risk-taking is permeates in our community, and I think that's something that is we should change. We need a little bit more of risk-takers moving forward.
I want to ask you one final question. You mentioned that you were optimistic about political leadership coming from the Latino community, but as of right now, there's very little Latino presence in city government, at least in the elected officials side, or in county government, or in the state legislature for that matter. Why do you think that is, and how does that change?
Yeah, we have not done well at the ballot. We have not. We've done much better through the appointment process, I think, over time. So our voting, we're a voting place over at UCC, and I could tell you when I vote at 7 in the morning, 7:30, there's probably as many votes where I vote at 7:30 as there is at 8 o'clock at night over at UCC in our voting place. So the 53204 is probably one of the lowest, voting places as a zip code area. And that's in the 1-5, which is where most Hispanics live, which is just, if you think of St. Luke's Hospital as the epicenter of 27th and Oklahoma, I don't know that it's any better. We just, I'm not sure that and maybe that's something that hopefully places like ours and others will change in terms of civic involvement and voting and the importance of voting. I think that's one of the middle class values that we're trying to partake with our kids, the importance of voting. So we've done much better through the appointment process than we have through the election process.
Let me open it up to a few questions from the audience. If you're in the seating bowl and you've been here before, you know what you should do. You press down on the rim, not on the ball, but on the rim. Keep your finger down there, and then we'll be able to hear your question. If you're in the back, wait for Ryan, the gentleman with the microphone. He'll hold the microphone. Please keep your questions brief, and we'll get to them as many as possible. Why don't we just start right over there, Ryan? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to commend UMOS. There's been a voting registration project there for about a year and a half, and they've been registering almost 3,000 voters a year.
Right.
So and there were 3,000 registered for 2016 there. So they're doing a good job there. So.
Thank you. Great job.
Let me, we'll go down here. I'll kind of work my way over here. Yes.
You talked about the stress in the Latino community because of immigration issues, particularly now. I would like to know how you handle the children in the school who come with that anxiety of, when I go home, will mommy be there? Or will daddy be grabbed on my way out? Specifically, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, thank you. We've had our staff, particularly our school, very, very sort of focused in on that particular issue. Lots of discussion by our counseling staff, working with several children that we know are impacted by that. So we've taken as much of a proactive stance in trying to follow those particular children that are being affected by trying to get ahead of it and talking to them in one-to-one mostly through counseling.
Let me take other questions. I'll go here, and then Ryan, there's a gentleman way in the back on the other side. Yes, go ahead.
A basic question or two, Ricardo. You use the term Hispanic, but we also hear Latino, which is preferred expression or term. And also, when does a person stop being Latino or Hispanic? Say they have just one grandparent out of four who may be Hispanic. When do they stop being Hispanic and just become plain American?
Well, I think if you're born here, you're probably would be American. I certainly am, and feel very much part of this country. And I think, as we said, I think most Hispanics feel the pride of this country very much. In terms of Latino, I use it interchangeable, but I tend not to be politically correct most of the time. So whatever, if you call me for dinner, you can call me whatever you want.
Back there.
Thank you very much. I'd like your opinion on something that was sparked by some comments you made about Latinas being the future of Milwaukee. In my own research, I've come to the realization that the immigration debate in the United States is not necessarily a debate about space. It's not necessarily a debate about the border. That's in many ways a red herring. The immigration debate is a debate about time. It's about the future of this nation. And so when people are concerned about the influx of immigrants, they're concerned about the future face of this nation, much like the future of Milwaukee itself, right? Where if it's increasingly a Latino community, a lot of people feel alienated from that future. And that generates a lot of anxiety. I think it's a lot of the pull towards building a wall. So if any of that is of interest to you, I'd like to hear what you think.
Thanks.
Well, my sense is that discussions like this, questions about getting to know each other better, I think we don't do enough. And I happen to be today talking about Latinos, but quite frankly, I'm a Milwaukeean, and I want all of us to have a discussion and get to know each other better and difference. But I agree that the nature of your statement of what's the real what are we afraid of? And I think what I'd like to do is quite frankly, is the more you get to know who we are and get to talk and hopefully close the gap of isolation as much as possible, I think we'll get a lot closer to be realizing that this is a country of immigrants, that all of us at some point have backgrounds. So again, I think I agree with you, but the question is, what do we do? What can we do to? And we at UCC have taken we want to be in all the things that U.S. citizens take advantage of. We want to be part of that, and we want to help our students basically move as quickly as possible to understand all those things and participate and hopefully get as good education as you have.
Other questions? I'll go there and then I'll come down to you. Sure, go ahead.
Mine is actually more of a comment and a thank you. I work in the College of Education and here at Marquette, and you've taken so many of our students over the last several years, and we really appreciate that. But we've gotten to the point that almost your entire middle school staff is Marquette grads. So I guess that's a thank you to you. We must be doing something right.
Well, you must be doing something right, because quite frankly, it's a love affair. There are the importance of a institution like this to the Hispanic community cannot be undersold or what have you. We have a relationship with your engineering department about an articulation agreement that kids that graduate from our school go to a particular high school in the field of engineering. In my sense, that's the answer to part of the question. As long as we're represented, and I just don't mean Hispanics, African Americans, others, in these fields I think that's really what's going to, so thank you.
Yes. The rim, yeah.
What do you see as the best path for pursuing our democracy? To the vouchers and charters and more privatization, which to me seem to be destroying the public school, or a return to the public school that has to take all of the students, including the disabilities?
Okay. So I think we in the state of Wisconsin have fought that war. The war is over. We have a program in the Choice Program now going on almost 30 years. So my sense that we can't continue to fight the war over every year, over and over again. So that would be one thing. I think we need to really focus on what's in the best interest of children and who is doing the job for my child today in the best interest, irregardless of sector. We are a public school. Charter schools are a public school run by a private entity. We accept, as a matter of fact, the hurricane in Puerto Rico, we just took 2 children in our new middle school that were displaced as a result of the hurricane. No questions asked, come on in. So our doors are open to any student that comes in at any time, disability or not. It's a blind application. We don't know. So my sense is that I understand the politics of the question, but quite frankly, we ought to be focusing on what's the best interest of kids, irregardless of what sector they come from.
Thanks for the question. Yes, hang on one second, we'll get you a microphone.
Thank you. Hi, Ricardo. Miralles Hood, proudly serving as Executive Director of City of Milwaukee. As a young, kind of like the next generation that Mike just asked you about of Latina leaders, some of the best advice I've gotten from you is what you said earlier is watch the path where people walk, or watch where people walk and then build a path, right? What else would you want young Latinos in Milwaukee to remember and not forget about as we grow and in our leadership and our work?
I want people like you to just think that you own this community, that you can do anything you want because you're talented. You know, you've come from this community, you're a product of Milwaukee, and you're a proud product of this city. And it is people like you that we basically need, people like me need to be handing the baton over to, and to make sure that you carry it out. Now, having said that, make sure that you're doing things based on data, not just on, I feel like this today, let's do it. Consistency, follow through, write people notes when they, no matter what. Those are the kinds of things that I would pass on.
That's great. Yes.
I noticed something as you were talking, and is that the schools you talked about feeding into are Catholic high schools. So is that, and that we have a great MATC system here, UWM, and public schools, and you're not talking about feeding into that or building coalitions with them. So is that part of what you think is the Latino religious point of view, that they're going to do better in a Catholic school? I'm just curious that you did not mention any public school.
Okay, and I apologize if you didn't hear. We have more students at UWM than any other higher ed institution in the community. I have, my wife is a proud alum of employee of MATC. We love the institution. I think the Neo Acosta Middle School is being done with a recognition that a 2-year degree is a valuable degree to have. The Catholic thing is more where the kids in our community took us. It's sort of the whole pathway, as opposed to us predetermining what schools they've got, because they populated most of those institutions in the past, where there was an absence of Hispanics, as the issues that I talked about. You know, even though We had 65% of Milwaukeeans are Catholic faith, Hispanic Milwaukeeans. We had very little representation in any of those schools to speak of. So we just thought, that's a natural, why don't we try to explore that? So there wasn't instead of, is in addition to.
Other questions? Yes.
You mentioned that our housing authority is one of the finest in the country. Yes. Could you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah. If you look, there are 5 public housing units in the city of Milwaukee. You drive through any of them, it is not what one would imagine: dilapidated housing, roofs that are falling apart, snow not being picked up in the winter. It is a very well-maintained, high-quality, and certainly, the waiting list, for example, just reopened recently, and you saw, within 2 days, 3 days, the list was totally full. That is not the experience in most cities. Public house has gotten better around the country, but Milwaukee has always been, in particular, under Tony Perez's leadership, even better. What they're doing, the innovation, the kinds of things that are involved, the involvement of their kids in graduating from school, their social services component, what's going on at West Lawn on the west side, that's amazing. It's wonderful. And quite frankly, talking about seeing things, people should see what's going on, 60th and Silver Spring in that area. It's wonderful.
Final question. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to commend the UCC for all the improvements that you've brought to your community. And just to promote UCC a little bit, my husband and I have been to your restaurant many times at night. It's wonderful. We've been to the art gallery. I know that you do professional boxing training, and you also have drug rehabilitation and halfway houses. So I follow your progress, and I just think it's a wonderful organization.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm going to wrap things up there. I'll ask Ricardo to just hang with us for a second. There are about 3 things that I want to mention before everybody leaves today. First of all, we have a couple of more on the issues events yet this semester. We have one next Tuesday. Christine may have mentioned that to you. It's Craig Gilbert, the Washington Bureau Chief for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. He is involved in a Lubar Fellowship here where he is spending a number of months trying to find out what's going on in Wisconsin politics, but specifically, it's such a simple question, isn't it? But specifically looking at what happened in the last presidential election. So his first piece will be in the paper on Sunday. It'll be in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel on Sunday. I've had a chance to read it. It's really quite good. And it's centered in southwestern Wisconsin, where I know you won't believe this, but there were a lot of Barack Obama voters in 2012, and there were a lot of Donald Trump people in 2016. Obama voters who became Donald Trump voters, a lot of them. And so he explores that. What's going on? How do people feel about our current state of politics in America? So that is next Tuesday. Craig will be here. As Christine mentioned, we have just a few seats left, but we'd love to have you with us. On Thursday, I think we're sold out. We're going to be talking about voting rights. A visiting professor here at the law school, Atiba Ellis, will join us, along with Molly McGrath, who is with the ACLU. She is involved in sort of on-the-ground efforts trying to look at how voting has been affected by changes in voting rights law. They'll both be here on Thursday. Alan Borsick has a great conference at the end of the month that will, well, I'll refer you to the website for that, law.marquette.edu. You should check that out. We still, I think, have a few seats for that. And interestingly, today at 2:30 in this very room, we have another event. It's not a law school event, but it's an event sponsored by the College of Communication just across the way. Some of you who read the newspaper may have been reading Mark Johnson, the Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter's stories on pandemics, on how diseases are being transferred from animals to humans. It's a pretty fascinating series, done with the help of one of the students over there at the university. They're going to be here at 2:30 today. So if you don't have plans for the afternoon, I'm sure they would welcome you to stick around and join them for that. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to mention today, other than the fact that We really appreciate you being here today. We always appreciate your time, your interest, your attention. So thanks very much for being with us. And most of all, thanks to our guest today, the UCC's Executive Director, Ricardo Diaz.